With over 476 million indigenous peoples living in 90 countries around the world, indigenous people are the holders of a vast diversity of unique cultures, traditions, languages, and knowledge systems. The 9th of August is used to remind the world annually not to leave the indigenous people in the dark, but instead appeal for a new social treaty so they can live and exist comfortably.
The indigenous people are generally those that had been living in a society before the coming of those that they were living with, those that came to dominate them. There are many indigenous people in the world today. Look at even in Ondo town, there were indigenous people in Ondo before the Ondo people came, because we have Ondo land before Ondo. Ondo came into being in 1510 when the migrant group from Oyo came to dominate those that have been living here. We have the Doko, the Fore, the Epe, the Oka, before the coming of the Ondo group. So they were the indigenous people. Yeah, we celebrate the indigenous people because of certain reasons. One, we have to know that they were the pivots, they were the original settlers in the society in which they live. Two, they were the inheritors of the unique culture and characteristics and traditions and ways of life and ways of relating to people and ways of relating to the environment. They were the inheritors and they were the custodian of such traditions. There is no nation in the world that does not have indigenous people, that does not have cultures and traditions that were primordial.
Most indigenous people and civilizations have less than average to almost no standard of living due to the fact that they were driven away from their native lands and made to stay in unfavorable terrains and environments. And now with COVID-19 in the picture, their situation happens to become a bigger problem since most were suffering from poverty, financial insecurity, and other inequalities from the get-go.
It's a problem of encroachment, culture capture, and culture domination. You know, the indigenous people now, they have been, relegated to the backwaters. If care is not taken, they face extinction. For instance, look at the Koma people. They still practice their culture. Look at the Bushmen and the Hottentots in Southern Africa. They still practice their culture. If not for it is a problem. And these are the problems that the United Nations group saw that brought about the coming of the International Day of Indigenous People. So it is the problem of culture capture and problem of culture domination. If we don't want them to go into extinction, this problem needed to be addressed.
According to a study, 40% of the global population of the indigenous people are at endangerment. Furthermore, the majority are said to be susceptible due to the lack of education. The educated masses should join the fight to elevate and educate these primal societies and preserve their groups so they do not go into extinction by raising funds and other factors of aid.
Well, indigenous people of the world should be protected, and then they should be taken care of. And I think that was, put into consideration, especially with the United Nations Organization Working Group that met in 1982, to be precise. That was the first time that there was a noticeability of the protection and looking at the interests of the indigenous people of the world. What we can do to preserve their community is through a large emphasis on what they have done through this International Day of the Indigenous People. That's what we can do, is to remember them.
It's also important that bodies governing developed countries should see into this issue by creating unwritten agreements, also known as social contracts, and raising awareness for the events so that individuals around the world will play their parts in safeguarding the lives of these people. Olajide Promise, reporting for KAFTAN TV News.